Hello and welcome back to For Finance's Sake. I'm Beth, Marketing and Communications Manager here at Chadwick's.
And I'm Rachael, MD of Chadwick's. And today we've got a really special episode for you.
This one's a little different because instead of diving straight into tax traps or property tips, we're actually shining a light on Rachael's own journey.
Yes, people often hear me talking about numbers, strategy, or HMRC updates, but today we're taking it back to the beginning, from growing up in a tough environment, juggling paper rounds and beauty salons, to building Chadwick accountants from my back bedroom. This is the story that shapes not just me, but the culture of our firm.
And it's not just about the challenges, it's about the resilience, lessons learned along the way, and how those experiences now drive the way you support clients and grow the team, and even launch this very podcast.
Exactly. So whether you're running your own business, thinking about starting one, or just curious about what goes on behind the scenes, we promise there are some real takeaways here.
All right then, let's get into it. Here's Rachael's story.
Rachel's coming through. I feel like we're properly in like Oprah Winfrey, Loose Women. No,
we can do that live, that's right.
Have a seat.
Thank you.
So as I say, we are recording today's session, so I hope you're all okay with that.
Are we recording? Yeah.
So I'm joined today by a qualified accountant, an award-winning business owner, a podcast host, and what I feel constitutes as a true entrepreneur. Her journey to success has certainly been a journey. From a challenging childhood, growing up with a mum who struggled with alcohol, a move to Germany with her family at the age of 9, and then returning to the UK in the midst of those pivotal teenage years. By the age of 15, she was juggling jobs, paper rounds, working in a hair salon, and even selling conservatories to people living in upstairs flats. She left school at 16 with good grades, but more importantly, a fire in her that said, "You have to make this work. No one else is coming to save you." She then worked in banking, betting shops, construction, care homes, the charity sector, and even opened a beauty salon, all whilst raising a daughter on her own, having left an abusive relationship. She was told to quit her job while she was pregnant, but called a lawyer instead. She started her business from her back bedroom, turning £1,000 a month side hustle into a successful £90,000 turnover in just 6 months. Today, she leads a growing accountancy firm, employs an incredible team, hosts a podcast, and has recently qualified as a chartered accountant. Personally, she's happily married with 2 children living in the country. Phew, all this and still only 37. Driven and with an appetite for learning, her dream is to get to £1 million turnover by the time she is 40. And listening to what she has achieved thus far, I'm absolutely confident she will get there. So please can I introduce Rachael Chadwick of Chadwick's Accountancy and Bookkeepers Limited.
Thank you.
Welcome, Rachael. I felt when I was writing that I was introducing a podcast, which is familiar territory for you and why we're being recorded today. So can you tell me more about your podcast? What's it about and what encouraged you to start it?
Well, it's called FFS, For Finance's Sake, before you get any ideas. And it's something I had in mind years ago when I first started the practice, was that there wasn't enough free advice for businesses out there. Everything seemed to be kept behind consultancy fees, and all this stuff is out there. The information is there. It's on Google, it's on HMRC, but people are just confused. And I thought, I need to give this information to the community. I need to do that. And that's what FFS is all about. It is about getting that information from a verified source, helping businesses, whether it's, do I need to register for VAT? What do I need to do if I want to invest in property? Just the very basics are there for the taking.
Thank you. That's great. So I gave a real rattle through your story. Just to let you know, Hazel and I went for lunch with Rachael, which was going to be an hour lunch, and I think was about 3 hours because I was just overwhelmed and just over enthusiastic about actually all the stuff we were talking about, hence today really. So I did a bit of a rattle through, but looking back, how do you think your childhood shaped your drive and ambition?
I think massively by not being given the things that my friends were given, I was driven to want to do the same things they were doing. And obviously, what do you need? You need money, don't you? So whereas they were all getting these ESA payments and pocket money and stuff, I had nothing. So what I was doing was, you know, like you said, the paper rounds, working in the pub, collecting glasses, working in the hair salons. And what it really did was shape to me not only the value of a pound, what it means, because it's not given to you, but it gave me that real drive and that real work ethic from a young age.
And so tell me a little bit more about your childhood. When we talked, you talked very openly and honestly with me about the difficulties and sometimes things like when you said you slept at train stations, imaginable really. Tell me a bit more about that and what gave you the strength to keep going through those difficult times?
I think, you know, there's two types of people. The people who just don't carry on, and that was one path I could have taken. But then there was, how do I make my life better? And how do I make sure that cycle doesn't repeat? You know, I think, you know, in a way we can learn a lot from people who demonstrate the things we don't want to be, as we can from those who set a great example. And for me, it was like, I want a household, I want a family where my children are safe, where they can come to me, where they can talk to me, where it is a safe space. So I wanted to create the opposite of that. So it really was a case of, do I just fall down and accept my fate and do nothing? Or do I take the steps to change it? Do I go out there and ask for help and see what I can do to make things better?
So tell me a bit more about that, if you don't mind, because it's very personal, very, very quickly. But as you say, shaped such a big part of who you are today. So you had your mum and dad, and you talk about the difficulties in your household. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? And then, as you say, what happened?
Yeah, so my dad had a great job. He's got a great work ethic. He's retired now, but he worked away a lot. My mum, I think, struggled with that. She struggled with alcohol as long as I've known her, and she wasn't a great parent, I think is a fair way of saying it. She wasn't a parent. She wasn't around. And it felt very much like I was raising myself and trying to shield my brother and look after him as well. It was really difficult, and taking that decision to leave that environment was hard, and to leave him behind was really, really hard, because you don't know what you're leaving him to. But you have to put yourself first sometimes. And I realised by leaving at 16 and setting up on my own and taking that first job, what I was creating was a safe space for my brother to come to as well, rather than us both being trapped there.
Yeah, but very brave and very honest. So you talked a little bit about the jobs, and we talked about the selling conservatories to people in flats. Blooming love that. I mean, come on, Hazel, this is the next challenge. So you said you ran a beauty salon business that ultimately didn't work out. Tell me a bit more about that. What happens, and why beauty salon, and then what happened?
Well, I think every successful entrepreneur has at least one failure story behind them. I haven't met one yet who hit the button with the first one. And just before I'd gone into this, I'd been working closely with someone who I now really do consider a dear friend. And we'd been turning around businesses for this businessman. We were taking businesses, we were, you know, doing the classic stripping them and looking at the problems, fixing them, and helping him sell them on. And we're like, we're making him loads of money and we're getting paid a pittance. Let's do this for ourselves. What do we both like? Well, we like having our nails done, and we like this and that. This is an idea.
And how old were you at this point?
22, 23 maybe, early 20s, yeah. And so we found this salon. We actually looked at a few things beforehand, a hardware shop, all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, I can't get as excited about selling hammers.
No, we'd done so many turnarounds that we were just like, let's have a look out there. And so we saw this hair salon that had great potential because all the upstairs wasn't being used. And we were like, oh, we could do beauty upstairs. So we both trained as beauty therapists. And so we had the hair salon downstairs and we did the beauty up the top. But it was doomed from the start. It really was. We learned a lot, that's for sure. We learned a lot. We put too much trust in the person that sold it to us.
Really?
Yeah, they told us that they were moving to Australia, and really they were just setting up mobile. They took all the customers and it was like starting from scratch. So you were just fighting a tide from the start. And we spent 5 years of, hitting profitability. Yeah. Staff members left, they've took a chunk of customers. We're in loss again. And it was just a roller coaster. But I don't think I would have got my next step in life, my next real job, had I not got that experience. In fact, they did tell me afterwards that was one of the reasons they'd hired me, because I had all that experience of line managing difficult staff, of the HR, of, oh my God, the stress of running your own business and knowing you're responsible for everybody else's wages. All that experience was the reason that I jumped in my career, because I was already part qualified accountant, and I was doing the finance manager thing a couple of days a week, and I was able to then jump into a group financial controller role because I had both experiences.
So learn from that thing that didn't quite go to plan, but absolutely made you, part of who you are today. I mentioned also that you initially raised your daughter on your own. As a mum and a single mum myself, I know that can be incredibly tough. How did that time influence your work ethic, and the career choices you made? Just tell us a little bit more about that, because there's probably a lot of us in that audience that often think about that work-life balance, think of our caring responsibilities, when we're mums, inbuilt in you. Tell me a bit more about that.
I think everyone that has a child knows how difficult it is, regardless of whether you've got a partner or not. And it's obviously completely new territory if you haven't been brought up with tiny little siblings. So it is hard. But for me, the financial aspect was the scariest. I was just starting out in my accountancy career at the time, and having a child that you have to pay a lot of childcare fees for. And then if they were ill, you still have to pay the childcare fees, but you don't get paid by your employer. That is a lot to juggle. And there's no partner to support you financially either. And I don't have a good relationship with my family. There was no outside support. It was really difficult. But people would point out to me, you would be better off on benefits. I thought, that's not what I want. That's not the example I want to set. And I felt very much like I had a chip on my shoulder. Having a child so young, a lot of my friends said to me, this is a bad idea.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
I was 21 when I got pregnant, so yeah.
And how long did you stay with the father of your child for before?
We split up during the pregnancy. We'd been together for a good few years, but he wasn't on board with the pregnancy, and I told him, get on board or get out. And that was it. It's quite an ultimatum to issue, to be fair. But it ultimately worked out for the better, I think. If anything, she spurred me on to prove everybody wrong. Just because you have a child at a young age doesn't mean your life is over. It doesn't mean that at all. And I used my maternity leave to do more exams and get more qualified. I used that to my advantage. And, it was wonderful.
And didn't you, when we talked, and I mentioned it, tell me a bit more about this when we were chatting before, that you were at work and you hadn't told them you were pregnant yet, or had you? And then they wanted to sort of make you redundant, which we know, Wesleyan, we know is not what we can do. Tell me a bit more about that, because I remember thinking, Rachael.
Make you redundant is a nice way of putting it. Yeah. I was pregnant with my second child. I'd met my husband to be.
Sorry.
Yeah. And it was a few years later, and it was my first job in the accountancy world. I loved it. And not having a close relationship with my family, actually the owner of the business I felt really close to. He was a father figure to me. He'd take me out for special coffees. I couldn't afford to pay for a Costa at the time and things. And it made me feel really special. And I had seen the company get rid of pregnant women before, and naively in my 20s I was like, what happened to me? He loves me. It will happen to me. And when I got pregnant, told them I was pregnant, within weeks I came into work one day, the office was empty bar one person, really odd. And I was brought into an office and I was told, you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong, you've done this wrong. Either resign or you'll be sacked. And I was in my mid-20s.
And it wasn't that, we're not talking 40 years ago.
No,
it's
no,
not.
We are not. We are talking, 2012. And I went, okay, I said, I just need a minute to discuss it with my partner. And I went back to my office and I called an employment lawyer. I didn't call my partner.
How did you suddenly, because there's that fight or flight, isn't it? I can't
Yeah.
imagine going, I'd just be in a state of, as you say, just shock. But you actually, did you take some calms or something? Like that to channel and to be able to make that call.
Well, working in finance, you see all the invoices that go through. So I knew people who'd use this employment lawyer against the company. So I was like, I'm going to call him.
Yeah.
So I called him and I said, you know, so-and-so, well, they're trying to do this to me now. What do you advise? And I said, like, these things they're coming up with, the things that they've made up, they were like, you paid this person after they left the company. Like, all the payroll was signed off by managers before it got to me. It had nothing to do with me. And he said, you go in there, you hold your head up high and you tell them, I'm not resigning, you can sack me. So I did. And they didn't sack me, they suspended me. So it was obviously a bluff. And I remember going and sitting in the car and just crying my eyes out because my husband looked like he was being made redundant. We'd just bought our first house. We had the second baby on the way. And suddenly I looked like I had no job. And I was just shaking and shaking. And I called him and he was like, do you need to get a taxi home? And I was like, no, I'm just going to wait an hour. I waited an hour till I drove home. And it was probably one of the worst experiences of my life, considering the horrendous child and all the rest of it. This is something I made of my own. And to be so betrayed by someone was horrible. But a year later, after a battle, they offered me my job back. And I told them to stick it.
Yeah,
I did. But yeah, it really does shape who you are as a person, and it makes you really want to fight for injustice for other people as well. I think it's definitely one of the reasons I set up my business was about culture and wanting to make a place that is really nice and really friendly, and probably too friendly, as my consultants are telling me. But, no, I wouldn't want anybody to go through that. It's just so unfair.
I mean, as you say, you cite your team, met some of your team here today as pivotal in your business growth in Chadwick's accountants. How do you foster that growth and confidence in your team members? What is it? How do you do that?
Well, I do think like leadership and development, I think it comes naturally to a lot of women. I think, we naturally foster our children, and fostering a team is very similar. Obviously with different boundaries. But, it's knowing the person, knowing their development. What do they want? And there's something I've always thought with staff. It's, there is a life cycle of an employee. They're not necessarily going to be with you forever. But if you support them to get to where they want to go, they'll stay with you a hell of a lot longer. So you need to do that. So even if it means, like, I've got a great guy who wants to be an auditor. We don't do audit. We're not going to do audit. But I will get him jobs, subcontracting audit. I will help him get that so that he can go on and do what he wants to do. And he will stay with me for longer because he's getting that exposure, he's getting that experience. But it's about obviously offering the qualifications and offering the support there. And I like to try and make time for my team. I think it can be really hard in difficult, like busy periods, but making time for your team to talk to them one-on-one and what is it that they need support with. I've got team that need technical help skills, and that's really easy for me. The team that need the confidence and that soft skill, that takes a lot more time, a lot more investment. Shadow me, understand, learn, and sometimes pushing them to do it. That's a brilliant one. I love that. Like Charlotte, she come to me the other day, you're not free at 10 o'clock, are you? I was like, no, I've got that meeting. So any chance you can come in? No, stand on your own 2 feet, go do it. And it was fine. It was brilliant. Yeah. She's capable, but she just needed that little push. And afterwards, she'd have seen her face. She was like, I did it. I could do it. Yeah. Because if I'd got on the call, I would have dominated it and she never would have got word in.
Yeah, and what do you say in those situations? I mean, I know I always quote one of my old managers who would be, fake it till you make it, Keely. And I do have that in my head sometimes in those situations when we get that imposter syndrome, don't we? We get that, oh my God, I can't do that. So sometimes you were telling yourself, but as you say, as a leader, as a business owner, as a manager, as you say, a business owner, you're doing that with your members of staff, probably without, as you say, inbuilt, without realising.
Yeah, I do suffer from imposter syndrome. I think most women do anyways. But there's something about sitting in the uncomfortableness of it that helps you grow, and being vulnerable to your staff and saying, That's okay. I feel like that too. I do. I see clients and I get there and I'm sitting with them and I think, God, you're worth millions. Why would you listen to me? And you really get in your head. And then at the end of the meeting, they're thanking you for all your advice and help, and they just love you. And you think, oh yeah, I'm good. But it's being vulnerable with the staff and saying, yeah, I know exactly how you feel. I feel that too. Sit in the uncomfortableness, grow with it. But I do think a bit of imposter syndrome does keep you grounded.
Definitely. And we talked, I'm talking about people within your business. Your husband is a key part of your business. I mean, we know 75% of SMEs are family owned, and family run businesses are some of the most successful. However, we also know that it can be quite interesting as well, I imagine. And sort of as a dynamic, how do you sort of shift the workload? How do you go from colleague, manager? Are you his manager?
Yeah.
How does, tell it, oh, that's some interesting, you've gone from manager to then husband and wife, and that's splitting.
Well, it didn't go that way round.
Yeah. Oh God, yes.
Not recruiting husbands from within. But it's funny because he used to be my manager years ago, so there's a complete dynamic change.
Yeah. Is he a strong? What I mean by that is that we know from research and work that I've read men that are managed sometimes by women, but sometimes if their wife, their partner earns more than them, is more headstrong, etc., that can sometimes be difficult. But he sounds
it's not
amazing.
difficult for him at all. He doesn't seem to suffer with it at all. And a lot of my friends have said to me all through the years, oh my God, how lucky are you that he doesn't care that you're the higher earner, because prior to setting up the business, I was the higher earner. My corporate salary was 3 times his salary. And that meant sometimes if the kids were ill, well, if I take a day off, it costs a lot more than if you take a day off. But I think the key to working with not just your husband, but any member of the family is respect. So yes, at home, we have a completely different dynamic. We are equals. At work, I am the boss, and you do what I say to a certain extent. To be fair, he'll tell you he's the worst treated of all the staff. But you have to have that respect for each other. Yeah. And I respect, he's a bit older than I am, I respect all the management experience that he brings to the company. I appreciate his perspective. We are very chalk and cheese. We can often have very differing opinions. I've been told that we bicker. We try not to do it in front of the staff. But I do really appreciate his input, and I need somebody to challenge me. So I think that there's definitely has to be a respect there. So we work with loads of clients who are husband and wife outfits, and some of them, they do not get on. You think, why would you work together? They clearly
have you seen some stats, literally?
All sorts of things.
Obviously, you have to keep it confidential, but it's just.
But yeah, they ultimately tend to end in a divorce and a nice valuation of the company. But I think it works for us because that respect is there, that when we're in the office, I am boss, what I say goes. And the respect is also mutual. I respect what he brings to the position. So I think that is why it ultimately works.
And also, I've never met your husband, but meeting your team, and I saw this week you won your 500 customers, and you give the air as well of, firm but fair, but lots of laughter and lots of fun, and that, as you say, is really important in that. Sometimes I imagine could be a stressful situation, as you say, at times, but actually if you're bringing that fun, that laughter with it, then
it all contributes to a great culture, doesn't it? Did you see some of the pictures of the scavenger hunt I designed and had him running around Bidford, and who could drink a pint fastest and all sorts of stuff?
I love that. That is just a culture is so important, isn't it? And I know young people today, they apply for jobs, they want jobs, that's one of their prime things that they're looking at, more so than 10, 15 years ago. What's the culture of the organisation, and how we can foster that culture is imperative.
It's really difficult the larger you get, because you've got a team that's really amazing and they get on so well. You do not want to put a cat in amongst the pigeons, do you? You need someone that fits in, and it makes recruitment really difficult. So when I'm recruiting, I'm doing the personality tests. I like to think when someone comes in on paper, I can tell if they can do the job or not. But what I really want to know is, do you fit in with the team?
Oh, so what, do you use a particular test, or do you?
Well, we have a Belbin that we do, which tells me what kind of profile they are. But you just get a sense for it. Are they going to really get along with the team? Are they going to have a bit of fun? Or are they not quite like that? Because I need to foster that, and I want to keep that going. It is the core of who we are. And then I always try and do a nice team event not too long after they join, so they can get to know the team like outside of the work and in the social capacity. But I love the team. They just go out together on things, and you think people who never would meet in real life and go do something are doing something. We saw some on our little group WhatsApp thing that we've got. Monty and Charlotte went to a National Trust place and had a couple of pints. Like, they are more than a decade apart in age. I can't imagine them ever have met in a pub and decided to do that. But because they've worked together and they've fostered that relationship, they've both had a quiet weekend and thought they'd do something together. That is just lovely. And like next year, me and Julia and Sean are going to go to a heavy metal concert. There's 10 years between me and Julia, another 10 years between Julia and Sean. We're going to look like a right weird. That's how weird it is. But that's just so nice that we can all enjoy the things that we enjoy together outside of work. And in the corporate world, I always thought that when they said, "Oh, we're like a family," I thought, I called it bullshit, quite frankly, because I thought, no, you're not. You don't fire your family. I mean, I might have done, but most people don't. But that's what they are really like. And I've shied away from the word a lot, but actually they are a little family. They go off together. They do things together. And I mean, what's better than working with your friends?
It's just a real heartwarming, isn't it? So tell me a bit more about the business. What made you realise accountancy was your calling, and sort of what decisions have you made along that way very quickly that you went from it being £1,000 in your back bedroom to then 90,000 in 6 months? What sort of pinch points and paths did you take?
Well, as you touched on earlier, I did work in the banks for a while, and I just had this in my mind that I wanted to be a branch manager. I don't know why, but I just did. I saw the branch manager around and I thought, I want your job. And I remember saying to her one day, like, "Oh, Karen, how do I get your job? How do I move there?" And she went, "You need management experience." I went, "Great. How do I do that?" She went, "You can't." "Is there not a training program for that?" No. So I realized, okay, I've got to leave the banks and get some management experience, and then I'll go back. So I left the banks and I joined the betting shops because I got a management position, got to learn all the line management stuff, all the HR bits. And then the banking crash happened. And I thought, banking doesn't look so safe anymore, actually. And, in hindsight, it would have been absolutely fine. The banks did bounce back. Everyone got their bonuses back. It would have been fine. But I was spooked as a young person. And I thought, I'm still relatively young. I'm going to digress and do something else. And so I thought, numbers, always good with numbers. And from a young age, I always knew I'd do something with numbers or science. I was always one of those. And I thought, I want to learn accountancy. So I paid for a course. I started it off. And I just remember going to that first job that I went, the betting shop had a time limit for me because the hours are unsociable. And once my daughter was born, you can't get childcare till 10 p.m. at night. It doesn't exist. So I knew I didn't have a long time before I had to come out of the industry. And I got a flexible working agreement with my employer that was only allowed for 6 months. So I came back off maternity. I'd just qualified my first qualification, and I knew I had 6 months to get another job, or I was going to have to lose that job because they wouldn't do the hours that I needed. And I got sent out my CV, like literally with, these are all things I've been trained in. And I remember going to the interviews with the piece of paper of, this is everything that I know how to do, in theory. And amazingly, I had 3 job offers really quite quickly. So I think I got really lucky there. And I obviously took one of those, and that started me off with my invoice inputting. That's all my first job was, putting invoices on a system. But they must have seen something in me, because within 6 months, they had me on this course to be trained up to be their in-house accountant. And I joined part-time, and they were like, "No, we need you full-time." So my daughter went from being picked up at 3 to 5 straight away. But it meant I was getting more qualifications, and I was learning so much hands-on. A lot of the employers I have, I can look back and say, "You did this wrong, you did that wrong." But the experience I got from them has really done me well. From there, obviously, I did various finance jobs in different industries. And actually, construction industry was one of my favourites. You would have thought it was the sexiest place ever, but it was not. I worked with a bunch of Irish guys in central Birmingham, and they used to make jokes that they would do the hoovering or making the tea, because I was the only woman in the office. And it was just such fun. But then I left there when we moved out to the countryside. And, you don't move to the countryside to give your kids a better life to commute to Birmingham. You just don't. So I took jobs with really heavily sexist industries, but a sexist culture. And it was really difficult. And it's bad enough with imposter syndrome, but imagine standing in a boardroom of 20 odd people and you're trying to explain something you want to bring in that's going to bring great change, and they're just staring at your tits. And you just think, you're not listening to me. So I kept moving to different industries, thinking it would be different. I can, move up the ladder. And the charity sector, I thought charities will be great. They're the worst. I was shocked how sexist they were. And in the end, I just remember saying to my husband, look, I have got to do this for myself. For a long time, I'd done just bits of payroll and bookkeeping on the side, which was my little side hustle. And I said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. People are struggling. People need this proactive advice. So many people are saying to me, what grants can I claim? How do I do my furlough? These sort of things. And I'm like, why isn't there accountant supporting them? They're like, can't you do my accounts? I was like, well, no, I need to be regulated. I've got a load of stuff I need to do. And I thought, well, I can solve all my problems here. I can make a great culture. I can support businesses. I can do all this myself. Now, my husband swears to this day that apparently I said, I'm going to have a nice little work-life balance job. I don't remember it. But I just thought, this is my shot. I've got to give it a go. He was petrified, but I sold my car because I had a nice car at the time. And I sold my car and I bought this banged up KA that was like 500 quid. And I said, look, right, that's my investment money, because I couldn't risk taking out a loan or something like that. Like, that affects my family. This just affects me. You've got your family car. This just affects me. If this goes tits up, I've lost my car, but I've got to try this.
And did you give yourself a time period?
I did. I said to him, if I can't make this work in 6 months, I'll just go get another job. Yeah. Or if it's not like taking off as quickly as I'd like it to, I'll get a part-time job and I'll supplement it. And he was like, okay. He was so worried, bless him. He's very risk adverse, and I'm not. And it just took off. It really did. People really need that hand-holding, that support. It's in the figures, the 99% retention rate, the fact that clients sing our praises, that, they do need that hand-holding, that most accountants just are a compliance reel of, we do your accounts, we do your tax, we'll see you next year, and it just goes round and round. Whereas we're hand-holding clients, we're open for them to come and talk to us, we encourage them to, we try and be proactive with them as much as they'll let us.
and it's sort of leaning on from that, and I know we talked about it, I think when we find it, particularly us at the Chamber, when we talk to small businesses, their accountant is actually often an extension to their team. It's that real trusted relationship is critical to their success, and actually, as you say, that relationship building is so important. And I bet you have to tell some clients, stop doing that thing that's habit that you've done for the last 10 years, or, right, I can fix this for you, but you can't go back to your old ways. How, as you talked about earlier, you have the very black and white nuts and bolts sitting down, the facts and figures tell you, but actually there's a big relationship building there, and there's some getting people out of their comfort zone. Do you find that?
Oh, massively. But building rapport is key to the good client-accountant relationship, and it's the reason people stay with you. And my God, if I had a quid for every time I had to tell a tradesman, stop putting cigarettes for your business. It's not a business expense.
Really?
They go buy the petrol, get the pack of fags, all goes on the same receipt. At the end of the day, there's those clients that come to you and they want to change, and they know that they need to do things properly. Yeah. Often they're turning a hobby or a side hustle into a real business. And they're the ones that are going to take your advice, they're going to run with it, and they're going to grow. Then you're going to get the ones that are never going to change. Yeah. And every year you have that same conversation with them. But I find it's about putting a bit of humour with it. Yeah. Going, oh, we found $2,000 of cigarettes in your accounts this year, and this, that, and the other. And because you can't let it affect you, because I
Yeah.
see people who can get frustrated and get annoyed and, oh, they've done that again. I've told them not to do that at this time. I'm like, don't sweat it. Just tell them it's
Yeah.
not going through the VAT return. It's just having that rapport is so important. And there's something that I do now when I get a new client coming in. I always find out a little bit about them and I put them with members of staff I know that they'll get along with, that they have something in common off the bat. You know, if they're interested in camping and camper vans, they go to Charlotte. If they're interested in football, they go to Chris or Monty. It's just knowing like what are they like as a person? What are their interests? And who won't get wound up by them?
And who bring out the best in each other.
Yes.
So I've got a couple of minutes. Hazel's giving me hand actions, which is great. But there's a couple of things that I want to touch on. I mentioned in the intro that you're award-winning, having recently been awarded Best Change Programme of the Year Award in 2025 Women in Change Awards. That's amazing. And I love it. I love it that it's a Coventry and Warwickshire business that's won such a prestigious national award. So tell us a little bit about that. And also, unashamedly, I'm just going to do a plug, because as you know, we last week launched our Chamber Awards. So I hope all of you are going to nominate yourselves, nominate a colleague or a fellow business owner, book a ticket to come in April. Think about sponsorship activities, but nominate yourself as well. You know, did you nominate yourself? Was it one of your colleagues? Tell us a bit more about
we
that.
nominated ourselves.
Good, I like that.
You've got to shout about your good aspects. Like, if you don't think you're great, who's going to buy from you? You know, don't get disheartened if you don't win one. We went to the Accounting Excellence Awards 3 years in a row as a finalist.
Oh,
never picked it up.
I bet you had fun.
We did have fun. And to be fair, some of the times we lost out was to like one of the big four, and you're like, okay, yeah, well, it's just great to be a finalist. But the Women in Change Awards, you know, the project we brought to them was a fantastic project. It was a proper transformational project for a really large business. You came in and they just operated off spreadsheets, and they desperately needed help. So it was about not only just setting up a finance system that was going to do everything, but convincing them they needed it. Yeah. You know, showing them the holes in their accounting, correcting things, but
and they would have to invest in that system. That's the big thing, I suppose, isn't it? So they're like, but hang on, that seems to be working. But you're going to have to invest. And
if you want to do there was all these things they wanted to do, and I was like, you've got finance all over the place. We can restructure, but we need proper records. We need historical records, and we need forecasting records. We've got to put all that together. And one of the key parts of it was splitting out their different project managers and seeing what their individual profit and losses were, because some of them were not delivering. They were losing the company money, but you don't know that without the figures. You can't have any idea. Lots of things were masked. You know, they had like staff in there that were only being utilised a few days a month on projects, and they'd be like, oh yeah, my project's really profitable because I make this on this member of staff, but you're not counting the other 16 days a month they don't work. So that's what like putting that together shows. And it was a very difficult project, because getting information out of project managers that probably know it's not going to look good is really hard. But we got all the records done. Obviously, a couple of people were exited from the business. And what we did, we managed to get that finance restructured. We got like a 4 million refinance, so a much lower rate, all in one payment. And we ultimately helped those business owners do a PE deal where they cashed out a proportion of their company, which never would have happened without all these systems in place. It was an amazing project to be a part of.
And how long did that project take?
Well, it was one of those, here's phase one, and it just kept rolling on. So I think we worked with them for over 2 years, but we continued it. We rolled over out like a PO system and training videos and all sorts of things. But what I would say about award entries in particular was this one, they a panel interview you. My God, that's frightening. And, you know, I prepared. I was like refreshing the project. I remember all the good stuff. And they asked me questions that were completely left wing. And I thought afterwards, oh, I'm never going to have won that, because I didn't answer half the questions yet. They kept asking us about the development of our team over the course of the project. What had we learned? And I thought, I didn't realize any of this. But you have to go and do this, because the promotion you get out of it, the business that comes after it, is brilliant. And so, you know, don't be disheartened if you don't win one. If we'd given up after the first 2 Accountancy Excellence Awards, we wouldn't be sat here with that award, and we won 2 more awards yesterday.
Oh, amazing!
Yesterday they came through.
That's time.
Perfect timing.
What awards were they?
One was for the Changing Lives Award with AVN, so about changing our clients' lives and how much impact we've had on them personally and as a business by restructuring and making things smarter and paying less tax legally, no wild schemes. So that's what we won there, and I can't remember what the other one was.
Oh, because
but we're also
well done. And as you say, I think that nugget to go for it, put pen to paper. It can feel daunting. It can feel. I imagine it can feel like, but it's a slice out of my day that I'm not getting a return on this investment, even if it's taken me a couple of days or weeks, depending on how long the process is. The Chamber Awards is very simple. So can I just say, so I expect to see all of you entering.
But even if you don't win, you can get loads of promotion if you're a finalist. Yeah. So we're at the Stratford Herald Awards next October. Actually, our lovely Beth in the audience is up for Employee of the Year.
I think I've seen that, yeah.
And I hope she wins, but even if she doesn't, think of all the PR we have got in the lead up. She's a finalist, and all you're doing is you're telling people, we're a great business, come work with us, come do this, come, and it's just about putting your Britishness aside. And because we are, as British people, we are awful at singing our own praises. If I compliment someone's outfits, half the time they go, Primani. Don't need to say that, you say thank you. The Americans are great at it, but us British are awful at it. You need to put that aside and sing your praises.
Definitely. So I've got a final question, and I will hand over to all of you just in case there's any more questions, as I say, but I'm conscious of time because I've overran, as I always do. But you are aiming for £1 million turnover by 40. Wow. What's driving that goal? What is it, and where are you going with that? And
great question.
How's it going?
Actually, I think we're on track to hit it by 39.
Oh my God, that's great.
But it's about sustainability of the business for me. At that stage, the business should be big enough that I can have more holidays, because I've not had a proper holiday without working for 4 years till this year. But being able to step away more and enjoy my life, maybe get that work balance that I apparently promised the husband many years ago. It's about the sustainability of it. And I think a lot of it is driven by a chip on the shoulder of, you had a baby young, you will amount to nothing. No, not at all.
Thank you so much for just thank you. That's
thank
so
you.
Good.
It's been wonderful.
I know I'm stretched for a bit of time, but I think we're all right. I don't think our chicken's going to go cold just yet. Has anybody got any questions for Rachel? We're going to have lots of time over in our lunchroom anyway, but has anybody got any questions they want to ask? Nobody wants to be on the podcast, you see. That's what I can tell. They'll come and grab you. You'll have a queue when we
can edit the recording out.
Karen.
It's not so much a question, more of an observation, just to say thank you for just being so vulnerable and honest and telling the story. Personally, there's quite a lot of personal reflections in your story and mine, and I think it's only to be admired when people do show that vulnerability, because we've all got our own stories and journeys, but it's just really nice to sort of highlight that actually it's not always that easy, and just really to say.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
You have to tell me your story after lunch.
Thank you.
I would much want to say that it's really impressive, and because I'm a accountant myself, really impressive to actually hear that story. I don't have your background. It's like it's blown my mind actually, But what I want to ask is as a accountant, obviously you got that deep business. Sometimes you sell on your motivation. You dig in the mojo. You come across mistakes. Sometimes we are very sort of criticize more than the client actually criticize. How do you pick that up?
That's a really good question, to be fair. And I think everybody has these moments where something drops in your email box and you think, oh God. And it can cloud your mind. It really can. But I always think that something comes to mind with me in some of my previous roles where I would deal with the complaints. And people who deal with the complaints, they always see they can come away with an image of a company that it's really crap. But actually, when you look at the complaints that you're dealing with and the size of the customer base, well, actually, you're just seeing, you're honing in on that part of it. So when I see something like that, I think that's such a small part, and it's one opinion, and how many people think something amazing, and you just have to put it in perspective, I find. You're welcome.
Just the last question we've got over this way. I don't know what. Oh, here we go. Sorry.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I suppose my question is, like, I work with a lot of women that have always wanted to set up their own business but haven't had that confidence to make the leap. What would you kind of advise to anyone that's always wanted to kind of go out on their own but hasn't perhaps done it yet?
I think, unfortunately, as an accountant, I'd say do a forecast. Make a plan, make a financially sound plan, and draw a sand in the line. If it doesn't work at this point, I will do this, or I will support it by going part-time. A lot of really successful entrepreneurs go part-time first. So they've got some sort of a regular salary, but they've got some time to commit to their business. So plan for it financially, and then really throw yourself at it. Just throw yourself in, and so, ignore the haters.
Thank you so much. Can we give another round of applause? Are we stopping the recording now? Are we still recording? I don't know. But thank you very much for the formal part of today. But we've got lots more time together because we're going. Where's Cheyenne? I hope Cheyenne is going to lead us to where the lunch part is. Don't panic. You know where you're going as well. Just to say thank you very much for this part of the session, and to let you know we've got lots of other things going on at the Chamber. And as I say, the big one is our Chamber Awards next year on April the 23rd. We've also got our annual economic conference, which is November the 14th, and lots more events to look out for. And Cheyenne might give me daggers, I can't say, but I'm still trying to plan, those of you that came to the last Women in Business, the flash mob dance in Birmingham, because I said we were going to do it, and if anybody knows me well, I'm not somebody that flippantly says we're going to do something and not do it. So I'm getting details, so please look out for the next Women in Business. We will have this sort of great session where we all get a chance to come to a lovely place and talk to each other and network. But actually, it would be great if we could all go over to Birmingham and have a hilarious dance as well, I think. For International Women's Day, it's not just taking a group of women over, for the important things that we want to highlight regarding gender equality and all the issues that International Women's Day fight for. So that is still something that I want to do, so please look out for it. I know Tina Costello and her team did it last year, so I remember talking about it, so I've not forgotten. So yeah, for me to say thank you very much, and everybody enjoy lunch.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us right to the end.
We really appreciate every single one of you who tunes in. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an episode of For Finance's Sake.
And if you found this episode helpful or inspiring, please share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really does help us reach more people and grow our community.
And of course, if you've got questions about anything we've covered or topics you'd love us to dig into in a future episode, you can always reach out to us at podcast@chadwickaccountants.co.uk. You'll find all the links to the show in the notes.
Thanks again for listening, and until next time,
For finance's sake, check the numbers.